you know what, to be quite honest, like
Hmm.
I went over the book several times and I kept finding mistakes. And then I was just like, okay, you know what, it's whatever. So I printed it. And the first, like you said, the first edition had a lot of mistakes, and I like got like a few people around me to help me fix some things. And then the second one also had errors. And then I was just like, how did the first people miss, like exactly what you just said?
Yeah.
But it's fine. I'm okay with it, especially for like upcoming writers who are watching me go through this process. It's just like, I don't want them to think that everyone is perfect like that. So,
Yeah. And like I said, like Harry Potter had errors. Maybe they're not as obvious because there's like 7 books in that whole series. But if you go through each book, I'm sure you'll find it in very like popular novels and series and everything, trilogies and stuff. So it's like
okay.
not even like I feel, I'm
Yeah.
not a writer, but as teacher, you kind of be like, well, it is what it is.
You know what's funny? In some of the teaching material that they use at our school, there's also like some errors in there.
Yeah. No, same thing. So we have like a new curriculum kind of, right? And we're just like, okay, this is new, right? And you just like, okay, it should be better. And then what do? You open the page and in the teacher's guide, you see like, that's wrong. And it's just like the same thing with the answers. You're just like, you're checking homework and you're checking the teacher's guide. You're just like, this is wrong too.
Yeah.
What do you mean it's the new edition? What do you mean it's edited?
Yeah.
Like, okay, fine. Human error.
Yeah, human error. That's what makes us human, right? We're imperfect.
Yes, imperfectly perfect, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, but thank you for even agreeing to do this. Like you've been with me in every hustle.
I know. I was just thinking about it like 2 nights ago. I'm just like, how long have I known Palessa? I've known her since she's been in Taiwan, Like, I knew her when you were like my coworker, and then when you went back to SA, and then when you came back, and I was like, I need your first book, and you're like, okay, let's meet up and everything too. And when I saw you post about your new book, I was like, oh my God, I need it. And now with the other one, I just need it.
Thank you.
Like I like hyping people up. If you're my friend and I like you, I will hype you up so much.
Yes, you've been doing that for me. Thank you so much. And I keep pushing my luck. I'm like, okay, Susan, you've done this. How about you do this now? Like with the book, you bought the book and you helped me out. And I was just like, hey, how about we do the book discussion? I don't know what's next, but whatever it is. Thank you.
I have my limits, but it depends on the type of person. And you probably wouldn't make me walk through fire.
No, I wouldn't do that.
Unless you were gonna do it too, I'm like, I'll do it with you. But it's one of those things where if I'm not gonna do it, you're not gonna do it. So I'm like, okay, we're good.
Right. Unless there's a million up for grabs, then I'm like, girl, let's get the cash.
I know we can split it 50, or I'll give you like 40 because you found it.
Okay. So where do you want to start?
I don't know. Like what how do you want to go? Because you're gonna like
you made notes, right?
Yes, I made notes on each chapter. You want to see them? They're on super cute paper.
Oh, that is so cute. Okay, let's just go through your notes and we'll take it from there. Thank you.
I wrote like I was very detailed in the beginning, and then once it started getting more complex, I noticed like some of the characters developed more and some of them didn't as much. It became more like just like a summary. So like,
okay.
Prologue was the girl in the cave, and I thought that was really meets boy, they become friends, and then he promises to come back and protect her, but he doesn't one day. She's just kind of disappointed. That's basically what I got from it.
Yeah.
I don't know the original message or whatever, but that's what I got from it. Okay, and then I just went. Where's my chapter 1? Here we go. We meet Tina, the psychologist, right? Psychiatrist.
Yes.
Yeah, and then we meet your main character in the first half of the book. I'm not quite sure how to say his name.
The Amhara or Rahanu.
Rahanu. There we go, Rahanu.
Yeah.
So we meet him. He's being like forced to go to sessions, right? And I thought that was kind of like, it made me think of like a friend I had where they were being forced to go,
let's talk about your friend. Why was your friend being forced to go for therapy?
he had some demons. Let's just say that he had some demons, and he kind of kept it from a lot of us, until it started showing up in other aspects of his life. Before like he could keep it very on the down low. And then when we found out, we're just like, why didn't you tell us this? And then you kind of realize, oh, maybe it's because he didn't feel comfortable, or he did address it, but we never took it seriously. And like with mental health, I'm such a huge advocate, like studying it in university, I graduated with a psychology degree, and I say this a lot, but I think therapy is fine. If you need to go, you go. Because it's your way of telling people, hey, I'm not okay. I know I'm not okay. So I want to try and fix it, So I think initially when when your character was just like, I don't know why I'm here, I was kind of like, okay, maybe to get my friend.
Right,
So.
right. Yeah. And did it help your friend going for therapy?
So I think so. In the end, I actually haven't talked to him in a while. It's one of those things where you don't really force it. After a while, if they're comfortable, they share it with you. If they're not, then I'm not the type of person to pry. Like I'll ask you, hey, how's it going? And if you don't want to elaborate, or if I feel like you feel no need to, basically, I'm not gonna be like, hey, tell me more. Unless
right.
like I know it well, and it's be like, give me more information. It's one of those things.
Okay.
Or disclosing their mental health. That's just it.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I like that Tina was very like the way she was introduced. Like you did, like I didn't actually know the story was set in Taiwan until you added the Chinese in there. I was like, oh wait, is this in Taiwan? Oh,
The rice, yeah. I think what gave it away was when the receptionist said ni hao and the rice, the rice dumplings and the chopsticks, then I think yeah.
And that came on later in the chapter. Like in chapter 1, I didn't note it, And then when I got to chapter 2, I was like, oh, they're in Taiwan. And actually wrote it down. Like Taiwan, okay, good. And then like Tina, like you learn a little about her background, and I think it's nice because I have some friends who are actually like psychiatrists and psychologists, or I know people like my sister has friends of them, and they've all had interesting backgrounds that I feel would lead them to be very like empathetic and sympathetic to like their patients. I'm not sure if that's one of their goals, but just being relatable, and Tina was very relatable in the fact that she could feel what the characters were going through, even with the receptionist, So I really like that. Finds out that he has PTSD, which I think a lot of people are actually experiencing now because of like maybe the lockdown, COVID, too. So I thought that was interesting how you wrote this like book a year ago or like early this year or something, right?
It wasn't during COVID, actually. It was prior to COVID.
Yeah, so okay, I figured it was like that, but it's kind of relatable now because people are like trying not to remember what they experienced, back then.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. Like for me, I feel like because like not even just for me, but for us in Taiwan, we haven't really felt it until like earlier this year, where we went from level 3 to level 2, and like, but I think this story is really helpful because you don't realize what a toll COVID has done on your mental health, and like any experience from your childhood or from your teenhood, So I thought that was really, really interesting. So that's chapter 2.
I like what you said, because I've also actually found myself blocking off some certain things that I probably need to deal with. But I'm just like, I'm so busy right now, I cannot deal with this, so I block it off. And when it's time to address it, you just it kind of breaks you, because you do have to go through, the emotions of, healing, try to like, dissect it and find out what happened and all of that. So I think maybe that's part of the reason why people don't deal with their emotional and mental issues, because it requires a lot of energy and time to actually try heal, Yeah.
Yeah, and just people in general, the whole admitting they need help, like you can confide in your friends and your family, and that's great. But after a while, it can only be so much,
Right.
And and then that's when you have to consider, like, do I actually need to speak to somebody, or am I able to just kind of let this figure itself out on its own?
Yeah. Also, what I've noticed is when it comes to mental health, you really do need to be selfish. A colleague of mine said, mental health is not like physical pain where you can see it and people know that, you're incapable of doing this and that, and that's where they help you. With mental health, you have to say, I'm going through this, and sometimes you're limited in your words, So I think that once you realize that you need to deal with certain mental issues, you do need to be selfish. And by selfish, I don't mean like mistreat people. I just mean in terms of, if you need to isolate yourself, then do it, yeah.
Yeah, put yourself first,
Yeah.
Like a lot of people are just like, oh, I think, it goes back to like human nature. We're such people pleasers, or like we don't like saying no.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people don't like saying no, even in the work environment, it's not just your personal life, but like your work life, your professional life. And it's like, after a while, if you're not one of those people who can actually separate your emotions once you get off the clock, then it gets a little bit hard. There are some people who are so strong and they've got everything down. Excellent, that's great. And then there's other people who just, can't, and that's fine too. Again, we're in,
Right.
So
I just I don't know if you made notes about Mrs. Chen. Since we're talking about, putting yourself first, I think that she, having married like I guess a Taiwanese man, she put him first for the longest time until she just couldn't anymore. And when it came, to seeking help, then she went to Tina and she recovered. And then she learned to, preserve her mental, physical, and emotional health, and I think even though I don't specify this in the book, but even though it might have been still painful for her to watch, her husband's infidelities, at least it's like she created this haven for herself, for her well-being. Yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting, because like everybody has their limits, and it's just knowing your limits, and so, and how to deal with them, when something goes beyond that limit. So I thought it was definitely something.
Yeah, when I spoke to my my Taiwanese friends about Mrs. Chen specifically, they were like, they understand why she didn't go for therapy for the longest time until she was, a little bit, older, because it's not within the Taiwanese culture, at least not with the older generation, to actually seek help. Yeah.
There's like a very big like mental stigma, mental health stigma, and even like in Western countries, it's becoming less. But I mean, at least in Asia, very, very uncommon to hear somebody say, oh, my therapist said this, or I'm going to get some help. It's just more like, why can't you deal with it yourself? Or, oh, you're worrying too much. Oh, you're too sensitive, And I mean, sometimes sensitive is like a good thing too, because you're more
aware, in tune.
Aware, in tune with everybody's emotions too, and yourself what your limits are. But when you say, oh, you're so sensitive, why are you so upset? It's one of those things. And again, we all feel emotions differently, so that also made me think about it when I was reading it.
Yeah. And I think, and I know people mean well. Like, for example, if you cry because you're sad and then somebody says, don't cry, it's like, oh, wow, thank you. It's very helpful. I haven't thought of that.
Yeah. I'm just like, if you start crying, I'm like, oh, why are you crying? And then if I say, don't cry, and you grab your tissue, it's one of those things, don't let the tears come down yet. Again,
Yeah. Okay, let's go through your notes again. I like your notes, by the way.
So, Lala, the receptionist, I wrote down she had an involuntary abortion. Yes, that was a very controversial topic, I feel, that you included, which is still being up for debate in very many, many, many different places.
I'm going to be honest and say that is... No, wait. the abortion part is actually
Mm,
based on something that happened. Well, not to me, but
mm,
I had it. I stole it from somebody actually. I had this African guy who told me, something
mm,
similar to what Lala goes through. And well, the first with the termination, basically, of course, I added some things. I added some flesh
mhm,
to the skeleton and stuff, but that's actually based on like a true story. And it was quite heartbreaking for me to hear it.
mm, mm,
Yeah, yeah. So maybe me writing about it was a form of processing, the
mhm,
shock that I
mm,
felt when I heard
mhm,
that story. Yeah.
mhm,
Why do you
mhm.
feel it's controversial?
I think it's um I think it's something that a lot of people don't think about when they end up getting pregnant, maybe like, well, because then like you're so in the moment, and it's just like, oh great, I'm pregnant, now what? It's either I have the baby and I can't provide for it, or I abort it and have this lingering thought of, should I have done that, later on. Whereas hers was forced, and it was just kind of like, why was it forced? Well, nobody like was willing to accept, and it's kind of like, in the end, like, if you're weighing your options, being involuntary told, like, forced to do one is probably the last thing on anybody's list, you know. So I thought that was quite controversial, and where it's, in the end, it's the person who's pregnant, the woman's choice to keep the baby or not, ultimately, And
Yeah.
I get that outside forces can influence, but in the end, you ultimately decide what you're going to do, and the fact that she was just going to be like abandoned, right? So it's just kind of like, ooh, do you want to listen
Yeah.
to, do you want to listen to your significant other, or do you want to listen to your family? It's one of those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
But then it causes a lot of like push and pull just with like any family dynamic, like with your in-laws and everything too. So it goes back into like a lot of family issues. And I just remember writing heavy topic. It touches upon a lot of current issues many people face. So I was like, yeah, yeah.
Not actually, not now that you bring it up, I'm trying to figure out what could have been the reason why, the reason behind the mom forcing her to terminate the pregnancy. Could it be that she was unmarried, first of all, she was still young, it would like give a family a bad name,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
is it because she was going to have an interracial baby? Because that's
I,
also another issue,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
I think, I don't know if you do that intentionally, unintentionally, either way, like it does touch upon all those things, One is they're not married. Second is her age, financial situation, which I understand, like if you're young, you're not mentally, emotionally ready for it. And then it's also, yeah, some families do care about whether the child is going to be interracial, and that's just something that we can only keep working to educate people
Right.
about, and saying it doesn't make them less of a person, like they are who they are. So it's definitely that. So I think that's why I wrote it down, because when I was reading it, I'm just like, oh, okay, I can see why, and then I started thinking, why did I write that though, and so when I went back and read my notes last night, I was just like, oh, that's right, you know because X, Y, and Z,
Yeah, yeah. Mhm. It was unintentional, by the way. It was
Hey,
unintentional.
sometimes the best, like, thought-provoking stuff comes from your accidents, unintentional things,
Right, right.
yeah.
Mm, okay.
So let's see. Chapter 4, oh, that's when he eats the food, right? Tina notices he's like malnourished and hasn't been eating, so she like leaves it there. And then when she comes back into the office after she cancels all of like her scheduled stuff, right? She's just like, oh, he eats it. And then I thought it was really cute how like you left out, like you added like a fun fact. Oh, did you know like this was made of da 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 da, And I was just like, that's a very, matter of fact way of saying things. I feel like it lightened the mood of the book, because the tone and the mood of the story is not the lightest, but it's not the heaviest topics either. So it's just like interweaves it. Like you're kind of just like, okay, it's kind of like not straight plateau of emotions, But the moment you say that, it kind of lightens up the mood. You're just like,
Yeah.
and then you're like, oh, okay, that's right, you know. And I feel like that was like a good way to like also grab your attention if you're just like, oh, this is getting too heavy for me, because everybody handles emotions differently, right?
Yeah.
So I that little tidbit. It was
because when you're reading the book, you're just trying to figure out what happened. You know, what happened to him, why did he end up there? And I also like that I added that part. And what I was trying to make the reader aware of is that, you know, in his normal state, he does have a sense of humor, you know. That in the first few chapters of the book. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting.
How did you picture him? I did not describe his physical appearance. How did you picture him?
I felt like he was a really tall guy, you know? And I figured from maybe his name that he was a person of color. We're going to call it person of color. So, yeah. But I figured him as like this tall guy, maybe like not exactly really, really buff, but not super like thin and slender either. But I didn't see him as somebody who wouldn't be unattractive, you know?
Right.
So like at least like decent looking, okay looking, one of those guys, you know?
Yes.
One of those.
Yeah.
So how
And did you picture him with like slightly longer hair or short hair or both?
I think I had him with like shorter hair.
Okay.
I think that's kind of like in my head, yeah.
Okay.
But other than that, I couldn't really see his face, you know? So you know how like sometimes when you're dreaming or like on TV you see it and their faces are blurred out, but everything else is kind of like there, like a silhouette.
Yeah.
That's like how I pictured everybody in this book, which I think is quite nice, because then some stories and books, they give you an exact description, like, and sometimes it doesn't want you to use your imagination, whereas with this one, it makes you,
it limits you. Yeah, it does. I get that. And I did that intentionally. I didn't want to fully describe, you know, the person's physical appearance. And with the book, I don't think that I spoon feed you. I just kind of want the reader to be open to coming up with, like, filling in the gaps with whatever they feel would be suitable in this moment, so that the story is told, yes, but then it's also experienced differently for different kind of people, also depending on where you are, you know. If you're in Taiwan, you're going to experience the story differently and you're going to relate with the Taiwanese characters. And if you are in Africa and a Black woman, you relate with them differently. You know, if you are like basically, that's what I wanted.
Yeah, I totally got that. Like,
okay.
I feel like just like the introduction of so many different characters and the way that you didn't go into too much detail leaves so much more space and like room for you to go into more elaborate details if you were to expand into like different like little short stories, you know, about each, which I thought was pretty interesting. You know?
Yeah, it wasn't frustrating for you that I didn't like give too much detail?
I think that was like the kind of style you're maybe going for. So, I mean, I think the main idea, I don't know, for me personally, I thought the main like idea of the book is that maybe it's just me, but I think it's like mental health and just knowing that your past experiences shape who you are. It's kind of one of those things I got. And in order to set up that kind of main idea flow, you have to just dive into the characters very briefly, you know, and then explain, oh, this is why this is happening. And this is why they are who they are today. You know, it's one of those things. But it didn't occur to me that I would feel like, oh, how come I don't know more about this character or know more about that one? Not at all.
You learned what you needed to know for the story to fit. Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah. But I also like that like, so towards the end of chapter 4, you know, that you find out that Rosa ends up, you know, she just disappeared.
Oh wait, hang on.
Kind of.
Let me try and remember.
Fine. Yeah, end of chapter 4, where they finish meeting at they finish their date. When I say disappear, yeah, which means she kind of, I think she passes away, right? Is that what happened?
Wait, is that chapter 4? Oh, you mean chapter 5?
Is it chapter 4 or chapter 5? Chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 5, chapter 5. Her
Chapter
death,
5.
right?
Yeah.
And then chapter 5,
After the dates,
yeah. Yeah, after the date, she just kind of goodbye.
She dies. You can use the word die.
Yeah, she dies, and I was like, huh? That was me going, wait, what? What? I reread that chapter. I was like, wait, oh, yeah.
And I think that's where you also learn that the setting is in Taiwan, because I mentioned Songshan, the Songshan Airport, and Yuanshan Station.
And then I realized, okay, for sure, it's definitely in Taiwan. Yeah.
Do you know that area where people can picnic and watch the flights take off and land?
I've gone on field trips and outings with my class there. So when you're talking about it, I literally pictured it, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's a nice thing too about you setting the story in Taiwan, because if you've been here, at least to all the like the important places, especially at that airport, you can kind of picture where they are. You know, it's like a huge area, but you can still kind of see it in your head, you know. Even though the characters, again, they don't have faces, but they have silhouettes and outlines. You know, you can kind of see what's going on. But yeah, when she like dies, I was just like, oh my gosh, what happened? He's just kind of like trying to figure out what to do next. And he's just like, okay, well, you can't really leave her there. So in the end, he has to bring her. But I really like the line where he goes, it's so like you know, how she like has to make a scene kind of. And I feel like he understood her well enough to the point where even if she dies, she has to make it like a grand gesture. Not on purpose, of course, but you know, that's just how it ended, you know. And I think the way that you ended his part of the story in that arc was really, really like a good way to like tie it back to why he was getting sessions to begin with.
Yeah. I like, and I mean, they could have had many dates, right? And you could sit down and think of all the things that they did together. Because first of all, we don't know how much time they had together. But it didn't matter because they made good use of it, right? And you find that out with the last picnic that they had, that they knew each other so well. They were very comfortable with each other. And that's why he wasn't really trying. Because, you know, in the beginning of the relationship, you're trying to like make the person like you. It's like, no, eat this, try it, and whatnot. So he knew her so well that he knew that whatever she wanted, whatever she felt like doing at that time, he was just gonna let her be, you know. And what else did I want to say? You know, that actually that scene still breaks my heart. It's so sad.
It's not what you expected, but then you knew when you were in the beginning of the book that's like something affected him. So you're trying to understand why, and then you learn a little bit about his background, but you're just kind of like, but that doesn't necessarily explain why he's getting sessions. And then you keep reading it, and then once you hit chapter 5, you're just like, okay, I think I get it.
Yeah.
You know, and you're just like, she died. She did. You know, she did.
And for him it must have been so devastating for him to carry a dead body of a woman that she absolutely adored. Imagine,
Yeah, and it's just like when he said he started noticing people staring at him, you know, the automatic assumption is not really, well, there's two things people could assume, right? Is either what's wrong with her or did you do it? You know, I feel like it could have gone either way, you know. Some people, you know, because some people will think the worst in others, you know, and some people will think, oh, are you helping her? You know, and when people think the worst in others, they're just like, what did you do? Did you do it? Like, what happened? You know? So I thought it was really interesting too, how you noted that people were looking at him as he was carrying her to like
that
the public area to get help, you know?
I like that. If I decide to do a part 2 someday, that's the line, that's the path I'm definitely going to take. That people were accusing him of her death. I like that. I like the way you think.
Because again, like when you like, I think I've just been watching too many like crime dramas and everything. So it's kind of like, because it's like it's not always the person who finds them, right? Either they're the ones that killed them, or they actually find them, and the authorities need to keep asking questions, you know, to make sure you're not have interest. There we go. Yeah. So the way you ended it could lead him to be whatever you like him to be in the end. But there are two scenarios that will occur. People will either ask him if he did it, or they'll just say what happened.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
Interesting. Sorry, you're just filling my head with ideas right now. I love it.
I've just been binge watching all of the Criminal Minds seasons.
Yeah.
Because they're online now, so I'm just having a lot of different ideas. Crime dramas, crime shows. Come on now. You're like.
And how about the little story that he was telling her, you know, while she was napping?
Oh, yeah. I thought it was quite interesting. Yeah. I didn't really know what to make of it because I felt like it was kind of leading up to something, you know? And then when he finished it, you find out she's dead. It's one of those things. And I just like, something's happening. Because like, you know what I mean? When I get a new book, you know, I will just turn and look at some of the pages and I'll be like, oh, why is it all of a sudden talking about Rosa? So I kind of spoiled it for myself.
Oh, you did that. I do that sometimes, yeah.
I do that. You know how like if they say if you like a book, you read the first few pages and then you flip to the middle and see if there's anything interesting. So when he was telling her the story, I'm just like, wait a minute. I remember I looked at this book right before I started reading it and something happened. And then I realized, oh yeah, right. When I was there, she died. So
yeah.
That whole,
yeah.
I was just expecting something to like happen, you know, so.
That kind of also says a bit about you, that you like romantic stories, right? Because that's what you were skipping to.
I do, when they are not too typical. Like I love the fairy tales and stuff, but I like stories also that have a little more like drama.
Substance. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Drama. Yeah. So,
okay.
Yeah. So the whole time I was reading it, I was just like, something's gonna happen. I know something's gonna happen.
And something did happen.
And she died.
And so then we're introduced, you know, after the whole, we find out that she dies. But then, you know, the next part 2, then we get to know more about Rosa. Then it's about her in the classroom. Tell me about that.
Oh my God. I love that you made her a teacher. It was like from personal experience where it's the most mortifying thing if you find something that happens to you and you think it's embarrassing, but your kids are just like, ooh. You know, your kids don't care. Honestly, they don't care if you feel embarrassed because they are more curious about what exactly is going on. Or they just don't care in general because they've been checked out, which is what some of the students in the story are. Some of them are just completely checked out. And you're just like, well, I mean, now I know where Celeste is pulling her experience from, kind of, because it's happened to all of them, you know? You know, like you're in the class, something happens and you think it's super embarrassing, but your kids are just like still vibing, doing whatever they want, or they're just like, why are you so embarrassed? You know?
Did
like,
you pick?
No.
Did you I don't know how to phrase this. Did you pick up some of your students' personalities in the students in the book?
I did think about some of my older students because their personalities are pretty like set. Like you know what kind of will tick them off or what gets their going, you know. So and then I thought about the student that was super checked out, and I was like, yeah, everybody's gonna be reacting, and then he's just kind of like still doing his thing. He'll look up and be like, "What's going on?" You know, because he's like playing with his eraser, playing with his pencil. It's one of those things.
Right. Yeah.
Very typical student environment, classroom environment in any country or nation. You know, it's one of those things. You know?
Yeah.
So I like brought her back as a teacher though, so I thought that was really interesting.
I like the contrast between Paul, the quiet one, smart, and was it Sherry, the talkative one, right? And I don't know, like, because that's something that I realized as a teacher, that the talkative student isn't always the smart one, right? And the quiet student isn't always the dumb one. And I think that's something that I kind of wanted to show in the book, that, you know, like, I don't know what else to say. It's
common. I think you see it more and more now, like not just like I feel like in movies you do see that typical like the quiet, studious student and loud, a very talkative one who's not maybe the smartest one in the class, not the brightest. But in the end, you know, in reality, you do have those kids, but you also have the ones who are just very confident in general. Like they're willing to be like, hey, I'm gonna say this, and if it's wrong, great, but at least I'm willing to say it. Yeah. Whereas you have the class ones, they're just kind of like, I don't know what's going on.
I don't care.
So I don't care. I'm just here because I have to be here. I'm just here to pass. You know, it's one of those. So I like that too. Because it's relatable.
Yes. And I think the one thing that people also don't know is that teachers care what the students think of them. I don't know if it's just me, but I care what my students, and with Rosa as well, because, you know, at the end of the classes, the students are leaving. She wants to know, like, do they care about what happened? Like, what do the students think of the lesson? What do they think of her now, you know? And like you said, the kids were just like, it was just like, bye, your class is over.
I'm hungry. I'm going home. I don't want to stay another minute here.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we might say we don't care if our kids like us or not. And I mean, I say that because I have a new class. I'm just kind of like, well, in the end, I'm here to do my job. And if you want to make it enjoyable for yourself, then try to at least pretend you like me. And I will try my best to be like, this class is the best one ever, even if I feel like, man. And then I'm gonna let you decide what that man means, you know? Like,
yeah.
It's one of those things. But in the end, like, you have your favorites in the class, and the students do have their favorite teachers. That's just always gonna happen. Like they say, don't favor kids, but it's really hard not to. It's like picking your favorite color. There's always that one color you love the most. That one drink the most. The one food you can eat forever and not get sick of. You know, it's one of those things. It's just like we have our favorites, but we also just want to make sure that the ones that we do like, you know, aren't judging us if we find something we feel is embarrassing in class, you know. So, I mean, it's too, they forget things after maybe a few weeks. Maybe. Maybe, not always, sometimes.
Yeah. What do you have on your notes about that chapter, by the way? Well, part 2, that part.
Rosa's wearing a wig?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, wig wearing. I can't read some of my notes. So yesterday I was going through, I was like, what did I write? I'm like, oh, okay. Because you know how when you start writing really quickly, you just kind of connect everything. So it's like half print. Your students, Shane, Paul, right? They diverged into a different lesson because students learn she wears wigs. Yeah, so she actually turned that very embarrassing moment into like a teachable moment, you know, which I feel can happen if you notice your class is more interested in asking you more and more questions about what happened versus let's continue with the lesson, you know, and that's very class dependent, you know. She thinks about Ryan. Ryan's the one who didn't really care about what was going on. Wait. Ryan thinks about Ryan, her ex-boyfriend. Sorry, ex-boyfriend.
So did you think they were dating, or was it just like a love affair or like a hookup type of situation? What do you think?
So the reason why I say ex-boyfriend is because I think if, you know how we ask people like, oh, like, how many people have you dated, you know, like seriously? I think even if they didn't have that title, you could say they did date, you know?
Right, yeah.
That's the way So basically, she thinks about him during class because they're talking about wigs and he was just kind of like, that's cool.
Yeah.
You know, like she thought he would make a deal about it, about her wearing wigs. And he was just kind of like, hey, that's you, man.
Do you, boo?
I don't like you for your wig. You know, like maybe I like some wigs better, you know, but fine, you know?
Right. Yeah. And what race did you read Ryan as?
I thought he was probably Taiwanese. Yeah, but just more open. Like you meet some really, really great native, like not native, but like Taiwanese people, super open-minded, super just welcoming of anything you teach them, super curious, you know, or non-judgmental. I thought he was one of those.
Yeah.
And you do come across them based on where you work. And sometimes they're just like, educate me more, tell me more, tell me more. I don't want to form an opinion of all foreigners yet,
Yeah,
like I've heard, but true, So like it reminds me of like our well, still my coworkers, but your former colleagues, your former coworkers, and how they have like significant others that ask questions like this, So I thought it made me think, and like
okay.
It was great. It was just the way you segued into it.
It's interesting to me because none of my Black friends would ever read Ryan as a Taiwanese person, because that guy is forward, right? Like he leans in for a kiss, they have fun in the kitchen and stuff like that. And I think the perception that we have is that Taiwanese men are reserved, they hardly ever make the first move, First of all, they wouldn't like just approach you at the grocery store like that. And so it's interesting for me to hear you say that, because for me, Ryan will definitely be white. And I think I wrote him as like a white man.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's also like the way I grew up, because I grew up in the States, right? But I was in a very like primarily like Asian American community, So the way I read Ryan is that he was probably from overseas and came back to Taiwan. Yes. And normally, like the way my family here, relatives here describe it, you can tell who an overseas Taiwanese, basically people who grew up overseas and came back, Right. And so they pick up mannerisms, like the way that my uncle said, I see more outspoken because I grew up not in Asia, where they're just more like you think about the whole community, whereas in a Western society, you're more individualistic. You know? So the way I perceived Ryan was that he probably grew up elsewhere and then came back and probably when like a very impressionable age, like in junior high school, you're like 12, 13. And that's where you're molding yourself, And he had met Rosa, and Rosa's just like, wow, okay, you're different.
I see why you would think that too, because he sings the Chinese song, right? Erling.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's the way I thought. I was like, but he's singing something not in English. So is this guy? What is he? Basically.
Yeah, I get it. And what tune did you come up with for that song?
I just read it as a poem. Words. I had no tune. I don't think I was thinking about it too, because I was just like, so this is the guy she met before she decided to go with our main character guy.
Right.
Or she,
I want to go back to it. I want you to read it for me. It's on page 67.
Oh no, but my toes are off.
Don't worry about it. No one will know.
You have the English on that too, don't you?
Yeah, I do translate it. Yeah.
Yeah, later on.
You can read Pinyin, right?
Yeah, I can. It's just the tones are kind of weird. You really want me to read it?
Yes, please.
I was thinking of actually like cheating and writing it down in like the Chinese way, so I know how to write it. So I know how to read it, because my toes are so bad. I am a very typical like overseas Taiwanese who has come back to Taiwan. That's just it. Like the way I speak Chinese, people can still tell it from overseas.
Yeah, so, your accent's different. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. Oh, okay. Let me see. What does it actually say so I can make sure my tones are similar? The song simply just says that 2020 will be my year. Oh. Okay, here we go. I apologize if I butcher anything.
It's okay.
Okay. 2020将是我的一年。2020将是我的一年。
That's beautiful.
2020 will be my year. 2020 will be my year.
Yeah. And I think that song kind of tells us that Ryan has also been through his own things.
Yes. When you say this year is going to be my year, I think it kind of implies that maybe the past year, 2019 at that point would be,
Yeah.
would have been not one of the best years too. So
Yeah.
and then I mean, I that's the kind of impression I had of him. He was not your typical Taiwanese person, if he was one.
It could be. He could be Taiwanese. Yeah.
Yeah, because he left it very open to interpretation too, I feel. Which is why most people will think they're probably white, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he's saying in Chinese, Taiwanese.
And then what happens? Okay, so they have their love affair, and then and then how about the last scene in the story where he just kind of breaks down, and then Rosa's like, okay, you know what, I gotta go now.
I thought that was interesting because that was like signify like the end of their relationship, right? And then later on, what does she do? She meets our protagonist, right? Which I think the way that she just kind of runs into him like it was fate,
Yes.
And I thought, oh, okay, now you kind of understand. It ties it all up together, which was really nice. I liked it. I mean, it was a very interesting way of how Ryan just he kind of just it imploded and then exploded. It's one of those things, But you learn so he does have his own demons. I mean, we all do.
Yeah.
And his was the tipping point for Rosa.
Did you read Rosa as a Black woman?
Yes, I did. Yes, that one I got when she was wearing I don't know, for me, when she was wearing the wig.
Yeah.
I just kind of, okay, yeah, I definitely saw her as one for sure.
And she was very conscious about her hair.
Yes.
I do think that, Black women here are very conscious about their hair, because you don't realize how different it is until you are in a foreign environment and everyone is just like, your hair. And so it makes us very self-conscious about, how our hair looks and stuff like that. And I think for Rosa, having experienced the culture shock that the way that she did, I think then she was probably looking for validation that, yes, I'm different, but am I that different? Like, do you care? Would you still care if I had that sort of thing? Yeah
I feel like as I was reading, I felt like I was asking myself, like, oh, did Palessa grab some of these stories and experiences from her own life and put them in the book? And I know that most authors do. If not, they add fluff to it or they change it a little bit. So I actually wanted to ask you if there was anything that you actually pulled from your own life into
it. Yes. Yes. And I borrowed from other people a lot. I had, and I did. And I don't know what to tell you. The story about Rosa and Ryan, that was not me. That's I borrowed from my friends who have actually, been in relationships with either Taiwanese men or, interracial relationships. Yeah.
It's okay.
Wait,
I'm
trying to think.
Okay. Yes or no is perfect. That's it.
The cave girl. I think that's more me than any other character in the story.
That's the thing. To be off on a little tangent, we'll come back to it. But it's one of those things where I've noticed this with a lot of just people who don't speak English as a native language. And when you tell them, dude, my English is terrible. And they're just like, what do you mean? You grew up speaking it. I'm like, and then I ask them, is your Chinese really that good? And then they're kind of like, oh, I get what you mean. I just kind of that's exactly how I feel about my English. Just because I speak it doesn't mean it's good.
Yeah. I can totally understand. I mean, I talk to you and I think your English is very good because you're able to express yourself. And then when people ask me the same thing, do you think your English is good? I'm like, oh, no.
No, and they're like, what do you mean? You speak it natively. You're like,
There's levels to this thing.
Exactly. You always like a scholar. Ooh.
Yeah.
I can speak like a little kid. That's great. I'm fluent in kid speak,
True. That's why I prefer teaching the lower grades. When you ask me to teach the higher grades, I'm like, hold up. I'm not ready
When
for
I
that.
I'm gonna be like, let me go run to Tristan real quick.
Oh yeah, Tristan's good.
Yeah, see, his is good. And that's because he people who are superbly good at their job teaching English, which Rosa is too. I noticed you made her an English teacher, right?
Yeah. I mean, what else could she be in Taiwan?
Science, teaching science and English, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, but yeah. So like, people who are so talented in teaching English have been doing it for like such a long time. They figured out the formulas. Some people who there are also people who just do it because it's what they're used to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you have different kinds of English teachers, but I like that because Rosa is an English teacher. She was able to like teach the kids about wig wearing in English, and the kids were able to keep elaborating on it too. They added their own expressions and opinions, and I thought that was really nice because that proves that her kids are actually at a level of English comprehension that allows her to be like, hey, this happened. So instead of just me feeling embarrassed, let's just keep going with it and make it a teachable. So
I don't know how you gauge it, but this is how I gauge a successful lesson when my kids are able to relate it to their lives. That's how I gauge. Yeah. Especially with new vocabulary words. Like, for example, if you introduce the word apple to your young students, and then they tell you about a story when they've like, either bought or eaten an apple and stuff like that. For me, I'm like, oh yes, we're getting somewhere. How to use it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I just yesterday we started a new unit and we're just going over the vocabulary words. And one of the words was basement. Like a parking garage basement. And they didn't know what a basement was. So when you relate it to their daily life, I'm just like, okay, so when you go home or when you go to like a department store, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you see maybe B1, B2, B3, B4, blah, 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 right? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, do you know what that B stands for? Absolute silence. And I'm like, basement, And I'm like, some of the kids still have question marks on their faces. I'm like, okay, fine, speak Chinese. What does basement mean for all of you guys who know it? And they're saying it in Chinese. And then you have the light bulbs go,
oh, I love those moments. Oh.
I think that's one of the best feelings with older kids who are not like elementary, like not kindergarten age. Because kindergarten kids will just have to keep repeating it to them. They don't start thinking about it until they're probably like 5 or 6, when they're getting ready for elementary school. But with kids like that, you see the light bulbs go off, and it's like one of the best feelings ever. Because you're just like, they get it. I hope they remember it now. But the moment that some of the kids go, oh, and they go, oh, I know, it's like, I did something great.
Yeah.
Now I remember it in 3 days because I'm gonna ask you again. And the ones that keep remembering, it's like they're gonna remember and probably go home and tell their mom and dad or a younger sibling and be like, hey, I learned this cool thing. It's super like small, but hey, it's an accomplishment for me. I'm just like, hey, the little victories, man.
Yes. Yeah. I like that. Other than mental health, what other issues did you feel like you wanted to discuss that were probably unintentionally addressed in the book?
I think it's also just like, I think you also talked about just like different kind of cultural backgrounds, culture, the way how you kind of framed like the expat way. I say expat because it has such like it doesn't have a very positive connotation, but it doesn't have a very negative one either. It's kind of neutral, because an expatriate is somebody who was born in their native country but no longer lives there, So that's, if anybody wants to know, that's what it means. At least from what I can remember, from what I can understand.
Thank you, Teacher Susan.
You're very welcome. Like, you and I are both expats. You're from SA. I'm from the USA, but we're both in Taiwan, and we're labeled expats. It doesn't matter that I'm also Taiwanese because I wasn't born here. And even if like there were people that were born Taiwanese who ended up spending a longer time outside of Taiwan and come back, they're still technically labeled. And so the way we see things is very different just because of how we were raised, you know, and how our friend circle was, and how our teachers, professors, you know, significant adults in our lives just talk to us and everything too. So I think not only did your book touch upon mental health and emotional health, you know, because they're very pretty much like right there. It also did the whole cultural aspect with addition to spirituality, I feel, you know, towards the end of the book, you can see that. But we're not going to spoil it, right?
Yeah, we're not going to spoil it. And what are some of the challenges that you face as an ABC here in Taiwan?
My favorite thing is I bring this story up because it just sticks in my head so much, and I think I need to like maybe write it out myself, because sometimes speaking about it is great, but I think once you write it down, it's like letting go, which I think your book was also very therapeutic for yourself, right?
Yes, like, very much.
You know, you have all of these experiences and you write it down. Once you get it down, it's just like, you know. So one of my experiences as an ABC is that I always get, oh, but your Chinese is so good. You know, how did you learn Chinese? I'm like, okay, well, my mom and dad spoke Chinese to us at home, but also like I have this very typical thing where because I went to school and I spoke English, I wanted to be more American for a certain amount of time. I remember it hit me the hardest when I was like in 4th grade. So I was like 9 to like 12, those 3 years, right? So I just didn't want to speak any Chinese, you know. And those are the years that are the most influential, I feel sometimes, looking back and seeing how my students are, you know, because they're at that age. And I'm just like, man, now that I think about it, I wish I had taken Chinese more seriously, you know, where like, because I speak Chinese with an accent. You can tell. It's not as obvious as when I first got here, but even like my cousins and relatives have said that, you know, if you speak longer phrases, we can hear that you do have an accent. But if it's short and it's just something you've been saying for a long time, like I like, then it's whatever. You can't really tell, you know. And one of the first things that a distant relative has said to me before was, "Oh, why is your Chinese so bad?" I don't really want to call him out for it, but it just stuck with me for a really long time. And every time like I understand what he means. He didn't mean for it to be mean. He's just one of those people, you know, according to everybody else who knows him very well. So I'm just like, okay, cool. He's a different generation than us. His thinking is different. He's more direct. Okay, fine. But the thing is, when he asked me that, I was kind of taken aback. I was like, I know my Chinese is that bad, but do you really have to ask me why it's so bad?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And then like at that time, we were at a very big family dinner. You know? Yeah. And my parents were not there. Yes. And it was my cousins next to me, a few of my uncles and aunts, and he was there. He is a distant relative, a distant uncle. Okay? And when he said that, two of my cousins that I'm very close with here, they both looked at me like, what? Yeah. And then one of my cousins who's closer to my age is like, oh, but she can speak other languages too. She actually speaks blah, blah, blah with me. And I'm just kind of like,
thank you. Nice save.
My other cousin goes, yeah, I mean, well, she can speak English fluently. So that's something a lot of us can't do, even though we can speak English. We're not fluent, you know. So they jumped in and helped me out. But it didn't really occur to me that he said it in front of everybody until after the dinner. Because when you're in the moment, you know, I just kind of like, cool, there's food. I've never had this before. I just got back to Taiwan. We're going to try. If we don't like it, we're just going to say it's not for me. And I think at the beginning, that was definitely something that stuck out to me for somebody who was an ABC. Yeah. Now I'm just people telling me I have an accent. I'm just like, yeah. And I dive into, I grew up in the States and I'm back in Taiwan.
Yeah.
Do you feel
like you don't have a sense of belonging? Because, well, I know the States is pretty diverse, but it's still like, you know, like black and white. And as an Asian, do did you feel at home in the States, and do you feel at home in Taiwan?
I feel like my definition of home is very different now because like if you want to say home, do you consider that like your immediate family, or do you consider just a place you grew up in or a place you live in,
A place that gives you a sense of belonging.
A sense of belonging. That's the thing, like it's a funny experience, a funny feeling, because belonging is like something that's so, I feel, broad, very general. But the way I see it is that if I'm feeling good about it, if I feel good, I'm with people that I love and I care about, and I can feel them loving and caring about me, that's my kind of home. Yeah. So, sorry, I have like a frog in my throat.
It's okay. You look good. You cough cute, by the way. You cough cute.
It's like it's a change in season. Wintertime is like killing my throat. I don't know why, but yeah.
Are you just doing this? Are you doing this for the camera? Like when you're all by yourself, it's like
no, you're just like you're gonna cut it too. Or not, and we're just gonna see Cindy look like ape shit crazy. But
you need to grab a glass of water. Are you okay?
I'm okay. I have tea. It's just on my it's okay, it's fine. So if I'm just with people I love and care about, and I feel that they love and care about me, that's like my sense of home, my belonging. So with a few friends, they're like my home. At work, there are some people that I vibe with really well. Some people that I used to work with that I vibe with really well, and that's my home. And then my uncles and aunts that I talk to frequently, they have said that you are technically our kid, our daughter now, so that makes sense. Yeah, of course it's always going to be different, And then when I'm back home in the States, like my home is my mom, my dad, my sisters, my brother-in-law, my nephews, my friends that I've grown up with, that I've known since I was in junior high school, and then new friends that I've met along the way at a university. So I feel like as long as I'm with people that I feel love for and that care about me and I care about them back, that's like my type of belonging.
Yeah. I feel that. And I totally understand, with the with the language. Because I'm Zulu, right? But my Zulu is not that good. And I remember being in university, I was talking to these girls from KZN. It's a province in South Africa, and they speak like proper Zulu. And they asked me, okay, so what are you? And I said, I'm Zulu. They said, no, you're not. I was like, all my life. I thought, and
yes.
So now I'm actually aware of the fact that my Zulu is not that good, and being in Taiwan does not help at all because I don't get to practice. So when I go back home, then I sound like a retard.
No, you still have time. Not gonna lie, my sister home in the States, she's just like, what's wrong with your English? I'm like, what do you mean? And she goes, speak like you used to. And I was like, well, I'm exposed to so many different kinds of English dialects, like you pick up on it. So I think that for us, we're not living at home, home, like physical, like in native countries, our home countries, we do have a different understanding of language. And that's what I like about your book too, because you do incorporate Chinese into it, like Taiwanese Mandarin, like that. But yeah, we have a different perspective on it. And even though one language may be regressing, we're understanding more about a different language. It's one of those things.
Right.
So, don't worry. Yeah, just being told I'm just like, okay, cool, whatever, man.
Yeah. On that note, Sambu, Lala's boyfriend.
Yes.
The guy from is it Gambia? So there's a part where he says something. For the first time, he says something, and I wrote it in his accent, right? And a colleague of mine was like, "Oh, you spelled don't wrong." I'm like, "No, I didn't spell it wrong. I just wrote it the way he says it." Because when you have that African accent, you don't say don't, you say don't, like that. So I wrote it. Wait, hang on. Let me find the page number.
Page 29. I think I found it. You said Lala, and I turned to chapter 3, and then I found it. 29.
Oh yeah. He says, Lala, you don't understand. Abortion is abomination in my country. I love that.
Yes.
I love that I did that.
Yes, I love that. I was just like, oh, I get it. That was on purpose, you know? And I think that's like the differences in different kinds of English too. Like, even though you grow up in a country or a nation, a place where English is one of the primary languages, it may not always be the most fluent for you sometimes. Or you'll understand it great. You'll be conversationally fluent. Mm-hmm. But once you start speaking to people who are supposedly native, you notice like these little things.
Yeah. It just actually kind of reminds, I want to say two things. I'm just wondering if that's the part that Christine saw and thought that I spelled stoned wrong.
I don't think so. I can ask her and see if she, I'll ask her on Monday.
It makes me think of Ben. Is it okay if we talk about Ben?
Of course.
And so Christine told me a story, because Christine was also like raised in South Africa, right? Stayed in South Africa for the longest time. And we call traffic lights robots. And she told me that when she first got to Taiwan and started teaching English and she met Ben, and Ben was like, why do you call traffic lights robots? They're not robots.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So
yes. And those are it's the picture perfect of saying American English is superior. And I'm just like, it's not. It's really not.
It is not.
It's really not. I'm gonna say that.
But as long as we understand each other, and it's so strange. Like in Taiwan, if you speak broken English, they call it Chinglish, right?
Yes.
And in South Africa, I think we just call it like broken English. And in Nigeria, I think they call it pidgin English. When you speak the Nigerian broken English, they call it pidgin English. In the States, do you have that? Or
we just call it broken English. Yeah. Well, because I was in more of like a Chinese speaking community, we did call it Chinglish too.